Kia ora. I am a grower, 35 years, and I'm just going to take you through a little bit of a journey of going from a grower to leading a global agri-tech company, and what some of the key lessons been learnt along that journey, and actually how to do this stuff out in New Zealand. I think we're very relevant to what's happening in the world today. So I'm just going to share some real insights, but this is one of my favourite quotes. If you don't like change, you like irrelevance even less. And I think this is becoming more relevant in what I would describe as the great food transformation era. It's changing, the population, environment, all those things. And really when you look at that, you've heard the speakers talk about this morning, 10 billion mouths to feed by 2050. If you look at specialty crops, which is what I grow, you've got ageing farmers, reducing labour availability. We need massive labour requirements to harvest these very complicated crops, limited natural resources, and the environmental impacts that are coming down the road at us really fast. To actually feed 10 billion people a healthy diet within environmental boundaries is going to require real change, real creative thinking, and real technology applications. Labour. It's rapidly becoming the biggest issue, and it's not just locally, it's around the world. And I look at the one up in the top left-hand or top right-hand corner there. That was in the kiwifruit industry last year, 1,200 labour workers short. I just read the other day they've extended worker permits because they're now predicting 3,400 labour units short this year. And if you think about Zespri and their growth plan and the licensing of varieties of fruit going out, this problem is only going to get worse. And what is happening is people are just putting more pressure on extending RSE workers or bringing labour in from somewhere else to solve that problem. What we're not seeing here in New Zealand is investment in R&D to solve these problems, in technology. It's easy to put pressure on government and try and get more workers in the country than for these guys to actually invest in the technology development. We have to change that model. What you're seeing globally is wage increases. California, 66% wage increases by 2022. Washington State, USA, 43% increases. There's more Mexicans going out of America than coming in now. Trump's wall is not about keeping them out, it's about keeping them in. And we're even seeing, minimum wages increasing here in New Zealand. It's going to have significant impact on production systems, particularly in these specialty crops which have high labour requirements. You've got people like Bruce Taylor, founder of Taylor Farms, the largest leafy vegetable producer in the US. They process something like 2,000 acres of leafy greens a week. And he's actually saying that if we can't solve some of these problems, people better get used to actually not having some of the fruit and vegetables they've been used to on the shelf anymore, because it's going to be no longer sustainable from an affordability point and a growing point of view. If we look at the auto industry 80 years ago, it was about skilled engineers, it was about people, it was about jobs. We look at the auto industry today, it's just about technology has moved this industry into almost full autonomy. There is actually a couple of people in that picture hiding up behind a couple of pillars. But that's what's driving. But in contrast, if we look at the horticultural industry, for example, strawberry harvesting 50 years ago, we look at strawberry harvesting today, we've got colour TV. That's been the change. I've still got my kiwifruit picking bag from 35 years ago, which is still relevant today. So really, Robotics Plus was really founded on a vision of sustainability. And that's really was around my own group of companies, which we started off with an orchard management company, orchard ownership, but we then invested into research, we invested into pollen production, which is now global. We invested into post-harvest with our packhouse facility. We invested into soil consultancy because we weren't happy about those services. We created a string of companies around our value chain. But the one thing that we looked at always was when I talked to my teams is, what's our biggest challenge going forward? And they kept saying labour. And this is going back 10 odd years ago. Because our managers were no longer managing the plants or the plant health or the quality of the food or of the fruit as much. They were actually having to manage people. Their job became a people management job. How to best get some skill out of transitional workers, retraining every year. So we started thinking about what does that look like? And so I just cruised around the country at the university and said, what's happening in the automation space? And that's where I met my co-founder in Robotics Plus, Alistair Scarf. He's now Dr. Alistair Scarf. And what we did was we funded him through his PhD to look at the potential of what automation could do to sort of get a sense of whether we could actually do this stuff. If I frame up my family trust and business grouping, I think about innovation at two speeds. And that is around the known, the stability, the reliability. So if I look on my right, I've got my sort of what I knew was my core cash flow businesses. But at the same time, I was using the trust funds and profits from that company to invest in future thinking opportunities. And that was around other fruit crops like rocket apples, getting involved in angel investing to understand what was happening in tech world, through to developing Robotics Plus, for example. So it was running these two strategies at the same time, knowing that if something happened over here, there was something here. And that came true in 2010 when PSA hit the kiwi fruit industry. We were 3 days into harvesting pollen. Pollen was an incredibly valuable crop to us, and PSA was announced. That was game-changing for us. That was, the story was I slept in the office for 2 weeks because I didn't know what to do. We're going, this PSA could be a problem. It could be transmitted by pollen. I was spending $100,000 a day harvesting flowers to extract pollen, and I had all this in front of me. So again, that diversity in your portfolio is really, really important. Another really important learning along the way is the right partners and team will be the difference between success and failure. And I think what we've learned on my journey, when I left school at 17, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, I've developed companies all my life. And one of the things I learned was I had no money at 17, so I had to learn how to partner. I had to learn how to find other people that were like-minded, willing to invest or willing to put money in the same game. So I've built my whole life and my whole career on partnerships and collaborations. And I think, it was a really good point made earlier in one of the questions asked with Raymond around, how do you take some of this technology globally? That is about collaborations and partnerships. And that sort of leads on to, partnering for global success and the power of those collaborative partnerships. And I'll talk a little bit more about Yamaha shortly. But in terms of, we created robotic apple packers. So when I looked at this, I said, we're an early stage company. How are we going to go out and build grower trust in America, Europe, across New Zealand? How are we going to service these machines? How are we actually going to integrate this one piece of technology into a very complicated system? So again, we partner with Jenkins Fresh Pack in New Zealand, who have service agents in every pack house in New Zealand and Australia servicing Sinclair labelling machines. So they have service people, they have sales people. Van Doren, they do 75% of the US Apple pack house installs and design. Partnering with them, fantastic. They knew how to draw our machine and integrate it into those ecosystems. So we haven't had to replicate service and sales models where you have to build relationships, the cost of having service people available, etc. So it was a very quick way to actually get technology adoption into the ecosystem. And those two companies actually formed a company called Global Pack, which now is our global distributor for our apple packers. Also, the government's played a big role all the way through our journeys, from really utilising those support systems of Callaghan Innovation to some of the tech development we did, to some of the big science funds through MBIE. We did a 4-year project with Waikato, Auckland and Plant and Food Research. And that gave us a lot of technology insight, a lot of science-based technology, not necessarily commercial outcomes, but gave us a really good foundation for our core platform technology. And trade and enterprise, of course, is once you're starting to go global, just the impact that they can have in supporting you in different markets and the knowledge they can share and the introductions that they can make. And I'll go on to team, but really what we're about is we need a multidisciplinary team to actually solve these problems. It's very complex. Taking automation into a field is very different than a car rocking up in a factory and putting an arm or a door or a window on it. We've actually got to go out into the environment. We're facing light, shade, wind, all sorts of different terrain and all sorts of weird structures. And the fact that in a lot of those places we don't even get GPS signals, or we don't even have data connection. And then we have to actually, every crop is different in the way that it has to be handled, or how it grows, how it works. So it's incredibly complicated. So we've really been on a journey of developing core-based understanding and technology around robotics automation, machine vision, software and control systems, machine learning and analytics. And to do that, we've had to build this world-class team that covers all those really interesting areas. 78% of this team are subject matter experts. We have 6 PhDs. We have 10 advanced machine vision people. We have 9 mechanical engineers. We have 9 mechatronics engineers. We have 6 electronic engineers. We have 5 software engineers. We have 2 product development people. So it's a big team to actually build this technology out. And the challenge we're having now is we've tried to tap as much of the New Zealand pool as we can, and we're now having to go offshore to find talent and find skills. We're having to look at where we base certain parts of our operation now, because of our system here. We're not generating these types of people in the abundance that we need, or the exposure that people overseas have to these big, high, fast-growing tech companies. Best advice I had was from a friend Rob Trice about 6 or so years ago. Steve, if you're going to come up and play in these markets, you actually just need to come up and be part of the community. Best advice I was ever given. I started going to every agri-tech conference, every robotics conference, every grower conference in the US, and built a network over 6 or 7 years. Built trust, built relationships. Very important. If you're going to be in this market, it doesn't matter whether it's in brand, whatever you're doing, you have to be in the market. You have to know what's going on. You've seen these big trends presented this morning. If you're not in the market and you ain't got your finger on that pulse, you're going to be way behind where you think you are. It moves so fast and so quick, and there's so much going on. If you're not up there and you're not being relevant, you are really not understanding what's happening on the global stage and what our opportunities as New Zealand really are. It was through that advice that we really built our relationship with Yamaha Motor Co. And it was through the first Callaghan AgTech trip to Silicon Valley that I bumped into the COO of the Yamaha Motor Silicon Valley Venture Fund, George Kellerman. And he was telling us that Yamaha's put a small fund together. They were really interested in what's going on in the US, what might be opportunities in the US. So here's this big $18 billion corporate wondering what's next for them. Motorbikes, wave runners, outboard motors really going to be their future? They're globally looking at where opportunities sit. And it was from that first meeting, and then taking that advice of going to all these conferences, I kept bumping into George. And George says to me one day, he says, we've actually finally got a strategy. We think agriculture is a really great place for Yamaha to play, particularly in robotics, drones, sensors, automation. And so when he showed me a strategy one day, this was maybe a year and a half on, I said, you better have a look what we're doing in New Zealand here with Robotics Plus. Showed him the video. 6 months later, we're doing a deal with Yamaha Motor Co. But it was through that trust, that relationships, aligned vision that happened. So this slide behind me is sort of interesting, because this is, and I think again it answers that question that was asked of Raymond at the end of his session. It asks that question about, they see us as entrepreneurial leadership. In Yamaha Motor Co, they don't know how to grow. So they saw the likes of myself, who's a grower, who understands the pain points in the value chain, understands where the return on investment really is. They saw that as a really big plus. So our ability to actually do the problem solve fit to the initial customer acquisition, they saw that as a huge benefit going into an early stage agile company. And then on the other side, you look at them, we saw them as enterprise leadership. So I've got that team of, I think we're about 50 staff now at Robotics Plus, but none of them have had years of experience in actually designing for manufacturing, or even manufacturing, or even going worldwide distribution of manufacturing. So what we saw in Yamaha was that ability to tap into their huge resource on a global footprint around getting that knowledge around design for manufacturing and mass manufacturing. But also the fact that they're so big, the cost benefit to us of integrating Yamaha componentry and their access to buying power is phenomenal. We could take up to $25,000 instantly out of some of our product just through that relationship and partnership. What became more interesting was that they sent their head of advanced engineering, a whole lot of interesting people up who were stunned with what we were doing out in New Zealand, and we formed a partnership agreement with them where we're doing our first co-working product together. We had a master collaboration agreement, really simple statement of works. We agreed all the IP ownerships, everything up front, and we're doing a project together. Sped our prototyping time up by half. And then they're actually introducing their componentry into our technologies, and we're helping them develop componentry for them to help meet their mission of creating components for automation in the agri sector into the future. And then in the middle, they've got a big resource in the US helping us to establish that US market. And we just use their back office, we've got their people on the road, we've got this power that we can go and have conversations with any of the big food producers in the US, because we've got a big company like Yamaha back behind our name. The doors that open are phenomenal. We sit and talk with the 4 biggest food producers in America that do 24 billion turnover. We sit here in New Zealand, I don't think we always understand scale. I have dinner with people that just are bigger than the entire New Zealand horticulture industry, and that's just a family business. So, it's interesting. But it also takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to become an expert. Agri-tech is slower. It's a longer term play. It takes time to develop these technologies, it takes time to integrate them, and it takes time to get that hard-fought dollar from the grower. I was at the World Agri-Tech Conference in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. They had a grower panel. The question was asked, who do you trust? The grower said, nobody. And then they're saying, and then their thing was, you guys all come to us with 1,000 different apps. We want a simple life. We want one app. So just, the alignment of this stuff takes time. And if you look at our journey and of what I would call deliberate growth, was through that period of having a couple of teams doing masters and PhDs, forming our foundation core technology, to then starting to bring a product out, to getting some comfort, getting that commercial, that product from being a prototype through to an actual industrial product that works, through to now absolutely scaling up with the power of Yamaha behind us. So what drives Robotics Plus is really about solving people challenges, enabling people to become more efficient, supporting industry growth and sustainability. We really like solving problems. And I'm just going to finish off, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of the tech that we're doing, just the simplicity of it. We're approached by a logistics company around scaling of forestry logs in New Zealand. There's a lot of logs go through the ports of New Zealand. The problem was they had this dangerous situation of people climbing over trucks, having to put tickets on every log, having to take 2 measurements of the log to understand the JASM, the Japanese Agricultural Standard Measurement, and then get that data into a system, and that log's been identified. So they said, can you guys automate this process? So we said, sure. So we built a 25-metre gantry robot that scans the truck, looking at the load configuration, has it got 3 lots of logs or 2 or 4? Sets an exposure, and then we scan the logs. What we're doing there is that job was taking 18 to 20 man-minutes per truck. Those trucks sat in that logistics centre there for 12 to 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes if there's only one labour unit. We now do that in 4 minutes. We can totally three-dimensionally recreate the truckload of logs, giving it a fingerprint. We can scan it. We can read the barcodes, and then those colours around the logs with AI, we are now at 99.8% accuracy in terms of log scaling. The goal they set us was 70%. We're actually too accurate for them. They've got no tolerance now. And then my team was saying the other day that those machines are now smarter than us. But it takes teams to sit there, teach those machines what they're looking for, and then the machine just gets smarter and smarter. The power of that data now, uploaded straight into their system. In fact, we could even start telling them the history of how many rings on every log if they want. So the power of that technology is becoming really interesting. And then to finish off, just showing you really, again, a simple task. You've got a whole lot of people, big pack house in the US packing apples. I'm going to put Abby's multispectral cameras on here now so we can do some other cool stuff. But what we did there was just simply solving that problem by a very affordable, simple robotic solution, custom built, that can stem and calyx orientate the apples and put them in the tray at whatever angle you want the apples on. And it sort of replaces essentially 2 labour units with a return on investment for the buyer of 2 to 3 years, depending how they utilise the technology. So again, our focus was simple problems in the value chain. And we've got a ton more projects going on, but and that was one of our first installs ever in a big pack house in the US. Getting that, you can see how complicated that system, having that partner like Van Doren who could actually draw our technology in there, install that technology, make that technology happen for us was pretty cool. So I'll just leave you with a whakatauki that I really like, which is he rangi tā mata whaiti, he rangi tā mata whanui, which is really a person with a narrow vision has a restricted horizon. A person with a wide vision has plentiful opportunities. So, ngā mihi.